Okay, so I just want to make sure I got the question. So one is you said that I hadn't invested in 17 months, and you were asking, I guess, why that is. And the second is that something about cash, about um, being in cash. I didn't get that part. Well, uh, all right. So let's handle the cash question first. And in fact, that's a wonderful question. So in 2008 and 2009, uh, I got my head handed to me in the markets. In fact, the indices were down, 38, 39%. I think in 2008, we were down close to like 67% or so. We were down a lot more than the market was down. And well, there's a couple of reasons. One of the reasons we were down that much is we were fully invested. We were caught very flat-footed, and and of course we've made up all of that ground and then some in the last few years. But I did a lot of soul searching as to why, what went wrong in our process and such, and I made some adjustments. And so I said, it's really important to have cash at times when markets are severely distressed. Anything that we invested in the fourth quarter of 2008 or the first quarter of 2009 is probably a 4x or 5x from those prices until now. Very significant returns were possible at that time. But of course, I was not able to play offense because I didn't have cash to the extent I wanted to. So I said, how do I ensure that when we hit these serious air pockets, that we have the ability to have cash? So first of all, just some basic math. So let's say I have a fund that's 80% invested and 20% in cash. Okay. And let's say the market drops 50%. And let's just say that my holdings also mirror the market and they also drop 50%. Well, what would happen is that my fund would drop from being worth, let's say it was worth 100 million before, the 80 million in stocks would drop to 40 million, but the 20 million in cash would still be worth 20 million. So a 50% market drop would translate into a 40% market drop for me because of the cash cushion. So the first thing a cash cushion is going to do is it's likely to cushion your drop to be less than the market, which is useful. The second is that 20% cash can now go on the offense and can get fully invested. And like I said, in 2008-09, if we had that sort of cushion, there were lots and lots of opportunities to get a 4x or 5x in a few years. So let's say you take that 20% and you invest it and you get a 4x return in a few years. So the 20 million becomes 80 million. The other 40 million might come back to 80 million, or maybe even if it doesn't come back, let's say it ends up being worth 70 million. Well, you now have a fund that's worth 150 million, 50% above what it was before the crash. And on top of that, your volatility and your drop would be less than the market drop. These are all good things. So what the 2008-09 period seared in for me is the importance of a cash cushion. So the question was, well, how do you know when you should have a cushion and when you should be fully invested? So the way I came up with taking care of that is I said, okay, if we have a brand new fund, let's say it's 100 million in cash, I said that the first 75 million can get invested in ideas that are a 2 to 3x in 2 to 3 years. A double in 2 or 3 years is fine. Then the next 10%, so the first 75% goes invested in 2 to 3x. The next 10%, we need at least a 3x. So that would get you to 85%. Then the next 5%, I said, should have at least 4x return possibilities. So that would get you to 90%. And the last 10% is 5x or more. Okay, so basically, if I looked at my fund for most of the last 17 months, we were sitting on about 10% cash for most of this period. And so the bar was that it could get invested if we found opportunities which were a 5x or better in 2 or 3 years with relatively muted downside. And that's a high bar. It's not easy to find 5x's. In fact, my purpose of having this talk with you today is to impress upon you that you were put on this earth to send me those 5x's. And so, Arvind will give you my email address, but it's also at the end of that video. And so when you have those 5x ideas, after you have fully satisfied your own appetite, you can send it to me, and that'd be much appreciated. And so basically, what that first 75%, 2x, then 3x, and 4x, and 5x does is it acts like a circuit breaker. It prohibits me from basically getting fully invested unless either markets get distressed or some very compelling ideas show up. And so, we've been floating around for the last year and a half or so with that cash cushion. And in fact, I see nothing wrong with that 10% or 15% cash cushion, even 20% cash cushion being almost permanent. That's perfectly fine. I think that the idea that markets would go through dislocations is almost 100%. We will see plenty of dislocations. You will see several dislocations in your lifetime. And so the dislocations will happen. We don't know when they'll happen. And quite frankly, to get fully invested, you don't even need dislocations. You might get fully invested with some anomaly with particular businesses and particular industries going through temporary distress. And that's perfectly fine too. So that's the reason why we found a lot of 2x's and even 3x's, but they were not enough to pull the trigger, if you will. And so that's why we're sitting with the cushion we're sitting on.